was dumped, badly decomposed, in the woods of what is now known as Bridgewood Hotel, which is near Rochester Airport. Bizarrely, people in the hotel still see a girl standing outside by the road in a whitish dress, wearing a white bonnet. I believe the ghost of Bluebell Hill is this young girl called Emily. But people say, right, okay then, if you claim that, why on earth would she be seen at the other end of the village, down sort of near the crematorium? What I did find out was that Emily Trigg used to live right in the area where the crematorium now sits. But then people say, so why would she be seen in the lower part, down by Church Street at Burham? Well, in the village at Burham, there is a churchyard, and Emily is buried in this churchyard. So I believe on that night, in 1934, Miss Emily Trigg was not getting a lift home, she was getting a lift back to the grave. And I thought as a kid, what an amazing ghost story. Even if this is complete rubbish, my dad has just made me go and change my pants, because this is terrifying. I thought, what a great ghost story. But bizarrely, in 1993, something happened on Bluebell Hill that threw a complete spanner in the works. As you come up from the lower bell, there was a very ancient road called the Old Chatham Road. And there was a family driving up Bluebell Hill. Now there was the guy that was driving, he had his wife literally in the passenger seat. In the back seat there was the mother-in-law, the next door neighbour and the daughter. Now bizarrely, they was all talking about the ghost of Bluebell Hill. Now what I find quite weird is this. I've stayed up Bluebell Hill many, many nights on my own. I've camped up there, I've driven up there thousands of times. I've never ever seen a ghost. Why is it, if people are driving up Bluebell Hill, now lots of people have heard about the Bluebell Hill ghost, when people are driving up Bluebell Hill, if you see a woman standing by the side of the road, why doesn't anybody pull over and say, excuse me love, but before you get in my car, are you the ghost of Bluebell Hill? Nobody ever seems to say this. It's as if she has some type of ability to pick on certain witnesses. Now I believe there are two types of spirit. You've got recorded energy. In other words, if a monk floats in this room and goes straight through that wall, it is clearly on an ancient pathway and it is in the past. But if a spirit comes in here now and opens that door, it is clearly able to interact with the modern day. I believe this girl on the Bluebell Hill area is able to pick on certain witnesses. And I often ask the question, now, does this girl on the hill still appear if there is nobody there to see her? And I think the answer to that is no. I believe a lot of these things depend on the human psyche. So when they say it's all in the mind, in a way it kind of is, but not in a sceptical way. The mind is very different from the brain, and I believe it takes a certain type of person to see something like that girl. You could be travelling late at night, you could be tired, and suddenly, bang, she appears in front of you. But in 1993, this family of 5 were travelling up the old stretch of Bluebell Hill. They were talking about the Bluebell Hill ghost and wondering, maybe we'll see her. Suddenly, up ahead, from the left-hand side, appeared a figure. But this figure was about this high, about 4.5 foot tall, completely shrouded in black, and it had a black bonnet. Now the guy stopped the car thinking, this has got to be somebody playing a Halloween prank, although it was belatedly, because it was November. And believe me, Bluebell Hill does create lots of weirdos. You get lots of weird people going up there of a night. I used to know one guy who'd go up there of a night, he was a bit of a local hard nut, but what he would do, he'd go up there at night, and he'd stand there in a woman's dress by the side of the road. Now he thought he was a ghost, I just called him a transvestite, but he would jump out in front of vehicles. Now this family, of course, at the time, they thought that there was simply someone mucking about. But then this figure turned, faced the car, walked straight towards it, and it came round on the driver's side. Straight away, like in all good Scooby-Doo cartoons, he tried sort of putting the car into gear. It was like, you go this way, Scooby, and I'll go this way, Shaggy. But this figure, they said, was horrifying. They said as it looked in the window, it had this black bonnet on, a mass of grey wild matted hair, black beady eyes, and a black chasm of a yawning mouth. Sounds a little bit like my nan. However, this figure was seen to be clutching sort of lucky heather or a spray of twigs, and they managed to speed off and the figure completely vanished. Now the next day, this family went into the local newspaper and they reported this figure, and the newspaper guy said, yeah, we've had 3 other reports of this old woman on the hill. And I thought that's quite intriguing, but once again, it's got nothing to do with this bride-to-be. However, in 2003, a young couple were travelling up Bluebell Hill late at night, and like all typical blokes, the young guy in the car said to his girlfriend, we're going to have to stop. I really need a wee. So, like in all good horror films, he said to her, I'll be back in a minute. And he did the usual, where he walked off down in the woods for half a mile, leaving his girlfriend very vulnerable in the car. When he came back, he got in the car, started the car up, and they both screamed. Standing there, in front of the vehicle, with its hands on the bonnet, was this old, hag-like woman. Now, over the years, I've taken several psychics up to Bluebell Hill. Now, I'm not sure what to think about some psychics, but, you know, lots of people like all this most haunted type of stuff. But if you ask me, anybody can get girls allowed in a room, half naked, bathe them in green light, tap them on the bum and say there's a ghost. But some psychics have a lot of ability to pick up stuff. And these 2 psychic friends I've got have picked up the fact that on this hill there is a very old woman that used to live on the hill. And I've actually got recorded accounts that this woman used to live on the hill in the early 1900s. And she was a bit of a guardian, and she would protect the hill. And she would often spook local people that were travelling on the hill, and some people at night would be out hunting foxes, and suddenly she would appear on the hill. But bizarrely, people say, right, okay then, so what about the young girl that has been seen on the hill? Well, interestingly, Bluebell Hill is so ancient, there's been murders over the years, and a young girl did fall down a well once on the hill, so these girls could be anybody. But the other interesting thing about Bluebell Hill is not just its ghost. Now, I've spent many nights on Bluebell Hill, in fact in most woodlands around the whole of Kent, because my job, like I say, is to go around the countryside and I collate evidence of so-called big cats on the loose. Now, believe me, there are lots of nut jobs around the UK that go around saying there's all these lions and tigers in the woods, which is complete rubbish. But I can guarantee, as a fact, that there are black leopard, puma and lynx. These have been seen around parts of Whitstable, Canterbury, Ashford and around Bluebell Hill. In 1525, a man was walking on the Pilgrim's Way around Bluebell Hill when he was leapt upon from a 60-foot high tree by an animal that the local reverend at the time called the Great Dog. Now, as we know, dogs, however great, do not climb 60-foot high trees. But this animal leapt on him, bit him in the throat, killed him and ate him on the spot. This animal was a leopard. I've actually seen a black leopard on 3 occasions not far from Bluebell Hill. I've also seen a lynx from parts of Gravesend, and this was caught on film 3 years ago. 2 weeks ago, I was down at Rolvenden near Ashford, and I actually found a sheep carcass that had been completely stripped and was 40 feet up a tree. When I pulled this carcass down, I found several hairs around the muzzle. I sent these off. These have been analysed and come back as black leopard. Now, people often say there's no evidence for all these big cats. That's because you're only going by what you read in the local newspapers. And as we know, newspapers only talk about these animals when A, they've got nothing better to write about, or B, it's Halloween. And then they talk about the local beast on the loose, like the beast of Bodmin, the beast of Exmoor, and of course, they just sound like a bit like the Hound of the Baskervilles on the loose. But these type of animals have been around for many, many years, but mainly since the 1960s, when it was very cool, very suave, and quite sexy to walk around with your pet leopard on a lead. These animals were released mainly in the 1970s when the Dangerous Wild Animals Act was introduced. But of course it doesn't explain the sightings going back centuries, and in the wild, these animals only live until they were about 13 years of age. So really, they should have all died out by now. So this means one thing: they must have bred. But if you've got a big male black leopard in Kent, it will not meet up with a female black leopard up in Scotland. Their territories are roughly, in the UK, about 80 square miles. And you won't get puma and leopard breed. And if you've also got a big black leopard and it meets up with your female domestic cat, it will not mate with it. It will eat it. So, there must be a small but viable population of these animals. Feel free afterwards to come and look at the photos I've got over there. But also, Bluebell Hill has got several other strange stories. There is a set of stones on Bluebell Hill called Kitscoty, or Kitscoty. These are said to be older than Stonehenge, will surely appear. This seems a complete contradiction, because if these are called the County Stones, then how on earth does anybody know if the devil is going to appear? But during the early 1900s, one evening, a baker went down to the Countless Stones and he placed a loaf of bread on every stone. But when he got to the end, he had one extra loaf of bread. And they say that it belonged to the devil. Because let's face it, in hell it's very hot, you can do lots of baking. And then they say that when the devil appeared, this poor chap had a heart attack. Great story, complete rubbish. But it all adds to the mystery of Bluebell Hill. They also say on Bluebell Hill there's a story of a giant hellhound. This is not simply the ghost of somebody's pet dog. This is a cow-sized shaggy hound with fiery eyes. And they say if you ever see this gigantic black dog of a night, then somebody in your family will die. Happy days. However, it all adds to the legend of Bluebell Hill. But I like these places because I believe these places need their mystery. Another place that I've also investigated is, of course, Pluckley. Now, Pluckley drives me absolutely mad. They say that Pluckley isn't just the most haunted village in Kent. It's not just the most haunted village in England. It's not the most haunted village in Britain. It's not even the most haunted village in the world. They say it's the most haunted village in the entire cosmos. And they say that there are between 12 and 14 ghosts. It's like Top of the Pops. In at number 12, you've got the red lady in the churchyard. In at number 11, you've got the grey lady. In at number 10, you've got the phantom highwayman. In at number 9, you've got the phantom coach and horses. In at number 8, you've got the monk of Greystones. In at number 7, you've got the phantom miller. It goes on and on and on. But I don't know anybody that has ever seen one of the top 12 ghosts in Pluckley. But what I do know for a fact is that in the 1940s, a bloke decided that the best way to get tourists was to make up some ghost stories. Little did he realise how this would backfire, and many, of course, decades later, Pluckley is now considered the most haunted village around. But bizarrely, the villagers are so fed up with their stories and the legend that the last few Halloweens have been completely cancelled. Because all these yobs go down there, they get drunk in the local pub and think they're going to walk down the road and see a ghost. Believe me, when you've had about 15 pints, it's amazing what you can see of a night. But the main story that intrigues me about Pluckley is the Devil's Bush, because it reminds me of the Countless Stones at Bluebell Hill. And they say that on a dark and stormy night, usually around Halloween, if you go to this bush and strip off completely naked and run around it 13 times, then the devil will surely appear. Now, I don't know anybody stupid enough that will go down to Pluckley on a bitterly cold night and strip off completely naked. And let's face it, even if you did this bizarre act, even if the devil does appear,